Jimmy says, foot position in the setup for snatch and clean. How close to your catching position should it be? So there are a few different names that we can talk about here. So some people will call it the jumping position and the landing position, and they'll actually give us some clues in a moment for when we look at which are the ideal positions. Some people will call it a setup position and a receiving position. But basically what we're talking about here, and the question we're answering is, where should your feet be when you're trying to generate power on the bar? Where should your feet be when you're then trying to get under that bar to receive it? And we need to look at this in the context of what each of these two positions, what each of these movements is for. So firstly, let's look at our setup position, that being when the bar is on the ground and you're starting that first into the second pull of a lift, or even if you're doing one of these movements from the hang. What is this for? Well, the aim here is to maximize bar speed when that bar is at your hip. So a lot of research into top level Olympic weightlifters has found that the biggest correlate of the weight that an individual is able to lift, this is when technique is standardized, everything else is equal at a high sort of level. The biggest correlate is bar speed at the hip. So if we can maximize bar speed at the hip, everything else being equal, we're going to maximize our lifts. So the purpose of that setup position is to create the fastest bar speed, the fastest velocity on that bar as possible at the hip. What is the receiving position for? Well, the receiving position is to be able to generate the most amount of force possible in a squat. So once you get under that bar, you can stand it up. Now, this ability to generate force from the squat obviously comes just purely from a muscular point of view. How much muscle force can we start to generate? But also from a biomechanical point of view. What's the most efficient technique or position to be in to not only be strong, but be able to generate that force and apply that strength? So these two positions and the intent of each of these positions can tell us where our feet need to be for each of them. Again, in that setup position, maximizing speed at the hip. Now that speed at the hip, as you come out of that power position, which is a knee extension, which is preceded by a hang position, a hip extension, that's going to be maximized the same way that we would maximize something like a vertical leap. So if you want a good idea of where your feet should be set up in that setup position, do a max vertical leap. Jump as high as you can, and wherever you're taking off from, whichever position your feet inherently go in is probably going to be the best position as your setup, because this is the position which is going to maximize your explosiveness in a vertical leap, but also to maximize the bar speed, the bar velocity when that bar is at the hip. So again, look at what the position is for, work out what position is going to give you that intent the most. So then your receiving position. You're now into a squat, because the intent here is to be able to stand up from that squat with as much weight as possible. How do you establish this? Well, you should be using the same position that you're using to front squat. If you're using a different position to front squat, you either need to adjust that front squat position so there's a better carryover to your Olympic weightlifting, or you need to adjust your receiving position so all the work you've done in your front squat is going to benefit that clean or squat recovery. So these are your two positions. This is how you establish each of them. And then it's quite simply a matter of going from one to the other. There is no ideal for each. They're both an individual thing, particularly that squat position, because there are so many anatomical and biomechanical differences which are going to occur individual to individual. But the real focus here is in making sure that each of those two positions is best engineered for the intent of that position. Look at the two in isolation. Then you can start to bridge the gap and work out how you're going from that position where you're generating force and speed at the hip to that position where you're receiving the bar to maximize your ability to stand it up.